Hey everyone, and welcome to Quantum Acacias. My name is Dee Dee, and I am so glad that we found each other. I'm really excited about this one. I'm really excited about this one. I'm probably going to end up doing a part 2 because there's so much connected to this one, especially like just in general, like, everything is connected into everything. Really, that's what I found. Like over writing down my dreams the last like 4 or 5 years, like consistently, like every single day, everything is interconnected into everything. And so there's so many branches on branches on branches on branches. And even when you think like, oh my gosh, this is just this tree, it's connected over to that tree and that tree. It is a lot. So anyways, I'm really excited about this one today because it is going to be lining up in a type of way with the new moon on February 27th, which is going to be the new moon in Pisces. I'm very excited about it. We also have a birthday in the family the next day, which is really fun. And this new moon is going to be happening at 4:44 p.m. Pacific time, which Mountain Time is also there. So in Arizona, it's also going to be happening at 4:44 p.m., which I am very, very excited about. I hope that that's the correct time. But even if it's not, I just feel like it's synchronistic that I'm seeing them connected to these time periods. So let's get into this adventures in the astral. So I'm going to start off with the adventure in the astrals, and then I'm going to go back to the connection, okay? So this is going to talk about Zadkiel and Saint Germain, okay? All right, let's get into this adventure in the astrals. Okay, so this was definitely, I'm pretty sure this was like the end of 2019, like November 2019, okay? And there was so much stuff just leading up to 2020. I mean, just spiritually and everything. I remember a friend and I were having so many connections even to what now, oh, child, I thought that was a cat. Child, we have, anyways, let me focus, child. Okay. So we were having this connection to the Bethlehem star, which if you go back, there was the new moon. Was it? Yeah, it was the new moon. I'm pretty sure that one's the one that was on my birthday in 2019. And it was also this alignment with the Star of Bethlehem. And so my friend and I, we kept having these connections to these 3 women connected to these 3 pyramids. And they all each had a baby, and they each had a stalk of wheat. Okay. And so as we're looking it up, and then as time goes on, I'm going to say that this is the Marasa Trois. Okay. The twins that turned into 3. Okay, that's what I'm going to say. So this celestial alignment with the 3 pyramids, which also could be also associated in some type of way to the 3 wise men, which I believe that there is a 4th wise man, which could connect to 3 planets and like a celestial kind of other. I wanted to say that the 4th one is Orion. I'm not exactly sure. But I was seeing the 4th one as Luke. So Lucas, which could be a wolf. It could be light. Could be a lot of things. The light wolf, the white wolf, which would be Wapawet. But anyways, let me focus. Okay. So anyways, during that time period, I ended up having this dream where I was like in that in-between state before you like fall asleep. And if you can catch it, you also can start to hear these sort of like radio frequencies going on. And sometimes you can hear people literally broadcasting. Like if you have not had this experience, you probably have no clue what I'm saying or what I'm talking about. And maybe it sounds like cuckoo cuckoo, but I promise you, there is this specific state that as you're going to sleep, if you can catch yourself before you fall all the way asleep, it's almost like this radio frequency and you can hear it. And then sometimes you can hear people broadcasting over, and it sounds literally like a broadcast where someone is talking. I've heard different voices. And then sometimes you can also use that to like, I don't know if it's consciously, but I guess you could consciously like tap into people, like hearing people's conversations. It's wild. But anyways, I was in that state, okay? And as I was in that state, I was like, oh, this is that state that I should really try to focus in and see what people are saying, because at first it sounds very distorted. And so you might not think that it has that much relevance, and so you might just fall asleep. But it almost sounds like people are talking to you, but it's like over like a muzzled radio frequency or something, like a walkie-talkie, and it's muzzled. So you have to really focus in on the person and like try to talk to them again. It's very cool. It's very interesting. But anyways, I was in this state, and there was a voice that came through, and it said, shining one. And I was like, oh yeah, I've heard that before, a shining one. And then this male voice said, Baba Ilu, princess of the Ilu. And I was like, okay, Baba Ilu, princess of the Ilu. Okay. And he was like, as I was kind of listening and I could hear him clearly, I was starting also to see. And as I was looking, he was making sure that he knew that he was talking about me. And so I was like, oh, okay, so I am considered to be a shining one. So this shining one concept is something that I'm going to come back to like at another time. But ultimately, I think people that are shining ones on this planet means that they have some type of connection to beings that at some point landed on the planet. Like you have some type of ancestry with that. I am not entirely sure that is the concept of a fallen angel, especially not in the traditional sense of like that the angels fell from heaven because they wanted to mate with women and stuff like that. That could be somebody's story. But what I'm talking about is I believe at some point in history, not that long ago, there was like an open interplanetary highway where it was relatively commonplace for people to have technology to like land on different planets, land on different, asteroids or whatever and things like that. Now, in what type of way, I'm not exactly sure. It could have been physically, it could have been casting your ka to different places. I'm not exactly sure because I feel like the astral world is an actual world. And it's not just consciousness and images and things like that. Like, I think that you can actually exist in your physical body and within your ka at the same time. And the ka is the vehicle for the astral world. And that astral world is also associated to different planetary bodies. And that's how you could exist with your consciousness now, but still be able to go to multiple different places, even though the atmospheres are different. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I think that like this thing about using metals and shaping metals and things like that to land on places is relatively new. But I do believe that at a point in time, you could use your ka. But there'd be a lot of benefits to not using your ka and then just using like materials. There'd be benefits to that as well. Now that goes into a whole lot of other stuff too, because I definitely believe, I believe that you can, like, that people can reproduce with cause, that's a whole nother situation. But anyways, so that's what I believe this concept of a shining one is. And then there was like this war, just like with 9/11. After 9/11, the travel and documents that you needed, everything got really strict, and even travel was restricted for a period in time. I believe that's the same thing that has happened like interplanetarily as well. Like I have been to Jupiter, I have been to Mars, I have gotten very close to Saturn. I feel like Saturn is very specific. I've also been on a moon of Jupiter before in the quote unquote astrals, like landed on these places. I've also been to Pluto before. Yeah, I've also been to Cassiopeia, like a system in Cassiopeia. I've been to a system in Orion, like Mintaka. Anyways, that's what I think the Shining One concept is. So I don't like I think that it's like a special thing, but I think it's also just has to do with a point in time where we were able to go to other places and interact with beings on other places. And then there was like this galactic war, and that got shut down. That got shut down. And then, if the memories and the thoughts and, things like that are not passed down to the children, then over time you forget to a certain extent, right? Because you're still going to have this memory of it, which is where we're like having dreams about these things. Anyways, okay, so let me keep going. Okay. So that was like the first night, okay? In this like series of events that I'm talking about. So that was the first night. Baba Ilu, blah, 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 blah. And so during that period in time, I was also considering doing QHHT, and I was thinking like, okay, I want to do something called the Omega brainwave. And this Omega brainwave is going to help get the oversoul. Where in the world did this whole dog come from? I know you like, whose dog is that? What? It's two dogs. Child, whose dogs are these, child? Okay, hold on. Doggies. Where'd they go? Hey. Where are you going? Hey. Whose dogs are those? Child. Okay, sorry, I had to stop for a second. They're just these random dogs that showed up. And I'm like, whose dogs are those? I mean, but unfortunately the shelter is closed, so I had to just like put in a report and hopefully someone will find them and whatever, because they ran away so fast. Anyways, okay, let me get back to this, okay? Because we're not a dog neighborhood, we're a cat neighborhood. We have like families of black cats and stuff like that. Like majority of the neighborhood is filled with black cats, so it's not a dog neighborhood. Okay, anyways, so, and they look like taking care of dogs, so I don't know if they got loose and it's like two buddies, just having fun, I guess. Anyways, let me get back to what I was saying, child. Okay, so anyways, so the next night I ended up having this dream, okay? Oh wait, I was talking about the Omega brain state, where you call in the oversoul and then we give the Babylon piece. So when he said Baba Ilu, I was like, oh, okay. And I know Baba is traditionally a father. And then that would set up for this event that happened in July 2020, where I get the 8-pointed star, which is also considered to be the star of Venus, which is also Baba Ilu. It's also the gate of the gods. So that was really significant. So anyways, before I get there though, let me go back to this dream. Okay, so in this dream, I was in this space, like this dimension. That's what I'll say. It was like a dimension, okay? And it was like an orangish reddish dimension. And for some reason, it just reminded me of like the comic book things when they say blam or kabam, And then, it's like this, like, kind of cloud looking kind of thing with a bubble, and it's usually different colors. That's what this reality looked like to me. And it was red and orange, and it was taking up all my visual field. So it was like completely reddish orange reality. And as I was staring at it, I started to see the letters ZDKL. And then I saw like them flip a letter in between and it said ZDKYL. And instantly I was like, oh, this is Zadkiel. I'm pretty sure that I had heard of Zadkiel before. However, like I didn't really know that much about him or anything like that, but I think I had heard the name. So when I saw the letters, I was like, oh, okay, interesting. It was a little surprising because I wasn't expecting it, but I understood that that was the same energy that had talked to me the day before. And so as I was like acknowledging it and I'm like, okay, hi Zadkiel, I ended up getting shifted to this dream. Okay. Now in this dream or this astral, whatever it was, I was in this place, in this dimension, and this was a brown dimension. Okay. Which brown is kind of like a variation of orange. And so I was in this brown dimension, and as I was in this brown dimension, I was seeing this group of men, okay? All of them seemed to be older white men on the surface. I mean, visibly doesn't say your whole ancestry, but phenotypically they look like white men, and they were all in these black hoods. Now, the interesting thing is that they were being taught by someone who was obviously a male of like mixed descent. And he was not a part of this black hood group. And that's the first thing that I noticed because I was invisible to them. So I was like just a part of the atmosphere, even though I was focused like behind them. So it was like this guy was doing, we'll call this guy Bob, okay? So Bob was doing this teaching webinar for and I'm thinking about Bob the Builder, and Masons and Freemasons and stuff are connected to builders. So I'm thinking about Bob the Builder. So anyways, so they're all facing Bob, and he's like giving like a speech, like like a teaching speech or whatever. And I remember thinking like, wow, how did Bob get in front of this group of, seemingly esteemed men, esteemed in a certain type of way, obviously a secretive organization or whatever, and he is teaching them things. So I was like, oh, that's interesting, especially because he is of mixed ancestry. And so as I was listening in, like I said, nobody could see me. I was just there listening, and I figured that it was Zadkiel that had put me here for me to see this webinar. Well, not webinar, I guess, but astralar. Astronar. Oh gosh. Okay, anyways. So as he was talking, he was telling these guys, he was like, you guys have to understand the secret of the birds. Okay. And so I'm like, oh, okay, what's the secret of the birds? Interesting. And so he was explaining to them that the secret of the birds was that you had to find a woman in the reality who knew how to fly. Okay. And so he was like, in order for you to get off of this matrix, in order for you to get off of this reality, off of this dimension, you have to find a woman who is willing to shapeshift you and her into birds. And that's how you get off of the grid. And I was like, oh, it's interesting. And so he was like, so I'll tell you how to do that. So I'm like, oh, and I'm going to get the steps on how they do this. Cool. Because sometimes you're in dreams and you don't know if you're going to be able to remember it. You don't know if you're going to be able to see all the details. But I was loud and clear there, surround sound, hearing it all. And so he started going into detail about how you do this. And he was pretty much telling them that, like, how you get a woman to focus and consistently, like, commit to being your bird. To being your bird is a type of stimulation. Okay, and I'm going to use discretion here, but you know what I'm saying. A type of stimulation. And this stimulation programs women at a very deep level to be committed to you and to be your partner. And then, you could do other type of internal massages, but the stimulation was the peak experience that would solidify her being your partner. And so I was like, what? And at this point, I'm like looking for Zadkiel, like we can look at each other like, girl, girl, what? But I don't know where he was because he was invisible to me. So I don't know where he went. But I'm just like looking around. I'm like, who can I do the girl thing with? Because what? And so then Bob made this point to make sure that everyone knew that there's only one type of bird that you cannot involve in this process. And he said, we're not looking for any pigeons. And when he said the pigeons, it's very interesting because I didn't even know that pigeons could fly until I got to Arizona. And I also didn't know that pigeons are part of the dove family until I got to Arizona. Because we're staying at the hotel, pigeons actually fly and live in palm trees in Arizona. I don't know about in other places. And so they have like their families and their nests and stuff in palm trees. And so it really depends on where the pigeons are and I guess the necessity if they feel like they need to fly, but they definitely can fly. And maybe some people knew that, but in New Orleans, baby, I never saw a pigeon flying. Never. And that's probably because where they were, there was always food, there was always their pigeon friends, and so they never really, I guess, felt the need to fly. Anyways, when he said that, I was like, oh, I don't think he knows about pigeons. Like, pigeons are sacred birds too. Now, at this point in 2019, I had not done a deep study on pigeon, but when he said it, it like hit my heart space like a weird type of way. And I was like, no, pigeons are sacred too. And so when he said that joke, everyone started laughing. It was like, ha ha ha, yeah, we don't want any pigeons, ha ha ha, whatever. And so, and then I ended up waking up, right? And now I understand that pigeons are actually really sacred along with doves. And he was probably being a little bit of a trickster to make sure that they didn't go for the pigeons because they are sacred to the divine feminine, and they're like a specific bird of particular divine feminine energies. And he probably has some type of like connection or deal or something with that goddess to make sure that her birds do not get tampered with. That's probably what that is. But anyway, so I'm going to definitely do a part 2, and I'm going to talk about, do I want to talk about that dream too? Let me think about, do I want to talk about that dream too? I guess I will talk about this part of the dream because I think it has a really good message in there. And then in the part 2, I'll bring in the Saint Germain connection into this, and then also Sadik. Okay, Sadik. Okay. So the end part of that dream, and I wasn't sure if it was really necessary, but the end part of that dream was actually me going into a body in the astral. So I was not this God-eye consciousness anymore, this observer anymore. I was actually interactively in this dream. And I ended up in a Walmart with this person, Bob, okay? So I ended up in this Walmart that was somewhere in Louisiana that I used to go to. And we were actually going to like the electronics section of Walmart. And so as we were talking, there was kind of like this thing of like, kind of like this atmosphere, I guess, of trying to make it seem like we were talking to each other, or we were, in some type of way, maybe romantically trying to establish something or whatever. But it was at the very beginning stages. And it felt kind of weird, so I was like, okay, sometimes in the dream world you can tell where there's kind of like, something that's trying to like make you think something, and that's not exactly what it is, even though you can't put like your finger on it. But anyways, there was some type of situation, whatever. And anyways, we ended up getting to like the back of the electronics section, like all the way to the back of it, and there was like this exit door. And like immediately Bob was like, can you fly? And I was like, yeah, I can fly. And he was like, okay, come on, let's leave this place. Like, let's kick this popsicle stand. And I was like, no, no. And so he was like, no, all you have to do is just run and jump and you can fly. And we start getting into like a back and forth, like kind of not an altercation, because I think that implies like physical violence or whatever, but we started getting into like an argument. Okay. And so I was like, no, I know exactly how to fly, but if you leave this grid, you're going to leave your whole family behind. And I was like, I have connections to my family, I'm not going to leave them behind. And he was like, well, why are you letting them, dictate where you go and your freedom? And I was like, well, my connections to my families and my friends are deep connections, and you could look at that as like a bind or whatever, but it's a happy one. If you like really are having a good time with your family and friends, why would you want to leave them behind? And I was like, I'll be ready to leave when my family and my friends are prepared to leave. And so it kind of turned into like this thing of like, but you shouldn't let them dictate where you should go and what you should do, and like, kind of like stopping you from greatness. And so anyways, I had to just walk back into the electronics section and let him, I guess fly off or whatever he was trying to do. And I wanted to say that because a lot of the time, like after I had my awakening, and as I was kind of figuring out things and understanding how the spiritual reality works and things like that, the conclusion that I've come to about this concept of enlightenment, and it's a very real thing. And like my arm is starting to get very, very warm right now, which is interesting. But this enlightenment, the one thing that I do want to say, and like if you're hearing this, I feel like it's so specific, okay? The enlightenment, the rituals, the dogma, the tradition, you reaching this pinnacle of yourself is not the goal of this life. And that's really, really important to say. It's important to say that you came from that. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so at a very deep level, especially if you're already doing meditations, you're already having these deep dreams, you're already psychically predicting things and everything like that, you have already activated this aspect of yourself that is enlightened. And some people are wanting to experience that in the physical reality. And I think to a certain extent, there's going to be a distortion of that because of where we are. But there are certain things that you can do as far as realizing different dimensional versions of yourself to get closer to that. But the thing that we are here for, like in the 3D, like in suit, is connection. It is not enlightenment. And also this concept that in order to be enlightened or reach the peak version of yourself, that you have to distance yourself from people, or that people will leave you alone and stuff, is not really a genuine thing of enlightenment. It has to do a lot of the time, what my personal belief is it has to do with whether people are ready to expand their reality. And there's a lot of trial and error, and there's a lot of pain that can come from wanting to do that. So people being resistant to the calling or to the awakening is very, very understandable. However, I am also under the belief that it is way more purposeful and way more fulfilling when you do it together. So people in relationships are not a they're not a hindrance to your spiritual enlightenment. Possibly slow it down. That's a real thing. But they're not a hindrance because you are here for a connection. Okay. And probably at a later time, I'll expand on that because there is, of course, some gray areas, and sometimes enlightenment, should be more of the priority, but I'll explain that more at a later time. But overall, this is about interpersonal relationships with other people and also with different aspects of self. And that's what I have for you guys. Wait for part 2.